Imagine witnessing the moment when a baby's cry echoes across the Nile River, hidden among the reeds in a desperate attempt to save his life. The book of Exodus opens with one of history's most dramatic rescue stories, one that would lead to the liberation of an entire nation and reveal God's power in ways that would change the world forever. This isn't just ancient history. It's a divine demonstration of how God uses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary purposes. Moses, a man who started life as a condemned infant and became the greatest leader Israel ever knew, stands at the center of miracles that defy explanation and confrontations that shook the most powerful empire on earth. Every chapter unveils another piece of God's redemptive plan, showing how he hears the cries of the oppressed and moves heaven and earth to set his people free. From burning bushes that speak to seas that split in half, from plagues that devastate Egypt to bread that falls from heaven, Exodus presents undeniable evidence that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is both mighty to save and faithful to his promises. Prepare to discover why this story has inspired millions, given hope to the enslaved, and demonstrated that no power on earth can stand against the purposes of Almighty God. The story begins in Egypt, where the descendants of Jacob had multiplied into a great nation, but a new Pharaoh arose who didn't remember Joseph or how he had saved Egypt from famine. This Pharaoh looked at the growing Hebrew population and felt threatened. In Exodus chapter 1 verse 9, he said to his people, "Look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen in the event of war that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land." Fear drove Pharaoh to cruelty. He enslaved the Hebrews, forcing them to build his treasure cities with hard labor. But the more the Egyptians afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. Verse 12 tells us the Egyptians were in dread of the children of Israel. When harsh slavery didn't slow their growth, Pharaoh took even more drastic measures. He commanded the Hebrew midwives to kill every baby boy at birth, but the midwives feared God more than Pharaoh and let the boys live. Finally, Pharaoh gave a horrifying order to all his people: "Every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive." Verse 22. Into this dark time, a baby boy was born to a Levite family. His mother saw that he was a beautiful child and hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she made a basket of bulrushes, waterproofed it with tar, put the baby inside, and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. The baby's sister Miriam watched from a distance to see what would happen. Then Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river. She saw the basket, sent her maid to get it, and opened it to find a crying baby. Though she knew this was a Hebrew child, her heart was moved with compassion. Miriam quickly approached and asked if she should find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child. Pharaoh's daughter agreed, and Miriam brought the baby's own mother. The princess even paid her to nurse her own son. When the child grew older, he was brought to Pharaoh's daughter, and she adopted him as her son. She called his name Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." The condemned Hebrew baby became an Egyptian prince, raised in Pharaoh's palace with all the privileges of royalty. Acts chapter 7 verse 22 tells us Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds. But Moses never forgot his Hebrew identity. One day, when he was 40 years old, he went out to his people and saw their burdens. He witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. Moses looked around, and when he saw no one watching, he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. The next day Moses went out again and saw 2 Hebrew men fighting. He asked the one who was wrong, "Why are you striking your companion?" But the man replied, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was afraid because his act was known. When Pharaoh heard about it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh's presence and went to the land of Midian, where he sat down by a well. There he met the 7 daughters of Reuel, a priest of Midian, who came to water their father's flock. When shepherds tried to drive them away, Moses stood up and helped them water their flock. Their father was so impressed that he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. Moses settled into life as a shepherd in Midian, far from Egypt's palaces and his people's suffering. He had a son named Gershom, saying, "I have been a stranger in a foreign land. 40 years passed. The king of Egypt died, but the bondage continued. The children of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help." Exodus chapter 2 verse 24 records, God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. The time for deliverance had come. One day Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro near Mount Horeb. Suddenly the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. Moses looked and saw that the bush burned with fire but was not consumed. Moses said, "I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn." When the Lord saw that Moses turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, "Moses, Moses." And Moses answered, "Here I am." God said, "Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord continued, "I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey." God was sending Moses back to Egypt to bring his people out of bondage, but Moses was terrified and full of doubts. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Moses asked in chapter 3 verse 11. God replied simply, "I will certainly be with you." Moses asked what he should say when the Israelites asked God's name. God said to Moses, "I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you." This was the eternal, self-existent God who needed nothing and no one, yet chose to rescue his people. Moses raised more objections. What if they don't believe me? God gave him 3 miraculous signs. His staff became a serpent and returned to a staff. His hand became leprous and was healed. Water from the Nile would turn to blood. But Moses still protested. "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." God's anger was kindled against Moses for his continued resistance. But in mercy, God appointed Moses' brother Aaron to be his spokesman. Moses returned to Egypt after 40 years. He and Aaron gathered the elders of Israel and showed them the signs God had given. When the people heard that the Lord had visited them and seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped. Then Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh with a simple request. "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh replied arrogantly, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." Pharaoh responded by making the Israelites work even harder, refusing to supply straw for brickmaking while demanding the same quota of bricks. The people turned against Moses, blaming him for making their situation worse. Moses cried out to God, "Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why is it you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, neither have you delivered your people at all." But God reassured Moses. "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will let them go, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land." God was about to demonstrate his power through 10 devastating plagues that would break Egypt's pride and force Pharaoh to release the Hebrews. Each plague targeted an Egyptian god, showing that the God of Israel was supreme over all. The Nile turned to blood. Frogs covered the land. Lice infested people and animals. Swarms of flies filled Egyptian homes. Livestock died from disease. Boils broke out on people and animals. Hail destroyed crops and killed those caught outside. Locusts devoured everything the hail had left. Darkness covered Egypt for 3 days. After each plague, Pharaoh's heart hardened and he refused to let the people go. Finally came the 10th and most terrible plague. God would strike down every firstborn in Egypt, from Pharaoh's son to the firstborn of animals. But God provided a way of escape for the Hebrews through the Passover. Each family was to take a lamb without blemish. Kill it at twilight and put its blood on their doorposts. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, God promised. That night the Lord struck down every firstborn in Egypt. There was a great cry throughout the land, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, "Rise, go out from among my people, both you and the children of Israel. And go serve the Lord as you have said." The Exodus had begun. About 600,000 men left Egypt, plus women and children. They took their flocks and herds and the wealth the Egyptians gave them. But Pharaoh changed his mind and pursued them with his army. Trapped between the Egyptian forces and the Red Sea, the people panicked. Moses said, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." God told Moses to stretch out his rod over the sea. The waters divided, standing up like walls on both sides, and the Israelites crossed on dry ground. When the Egyptians pursued, God caused their chariot wheels to fall off. Then he told Moses to stretch out his hand again. The waters returned and covered Pharaoh's entire army. Not one of them survived. Israel saw the great work the Lord had done and feared the Lord and believed him and his servant Moses. The journey to freedom had only just begun.